This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so this is our Fireside page, right? Hopefully everyone is now familiar with this. And here you have a list of all the resources. And this list is really important, especially when you're doing mapping. You will realize that you need to know which resource you map into, right? So you need to kind of have some idea of what resources are out there. Or at least, even if you don't know that, you should be able to navigate to the right section here. You can see the multiple sections here and figure out the resource you need. So for example, I think last time I mentioned Skip Foundation. It has more to do with the specification itself. So it really sets up the framework for the specification, validation, and all that. There's only one thing that might be of importance: terminology, which we'll talk about later today. So this one, if you skip, then most of your, from a healthcare perspective, most of the stuff is going to sit in these three layers. This is more administrative layer, this is more clinical, and this is financial. And you will see down here, you also have a specialized one. This is also kind of a mix: administrative, clinical, everything. But these are very specialized cases, which again, most of the time, at least for this track, we probably won't be needing. I mean, one or two might be needed here and there, but mostly not. So these three layers are mostly what we are going to be working with: base, clinical, and financial. So let's take an example, right? Let's look at patient. This is the example we looked at earlier on Wednesday. And if you go down here, what I wanted to talk about today, which we did not talk about earlier, was this. So here, let's take a look at gender, right? So it talks about, it says gender, it has cardinality. You may or may not have gender listed. You can only list it one time at the most. Its type is code. Code is a primitive data type. And it basically just gives a code, a value, a string value. And which is a code. By code, it means the difference in string and code is a limited set of values that you can choose from. String, you can put in anything there. So if you go in here, what those values are, it will actually tell you. So you see this required, right? What it means is you are required to select one of the values listed in here. And for convenience, they've actually listed the values here because there are only 4 values. But if this list is really long, they may not list it here. And to see that list, you have to click on this. And this takes you to something called the value set. And it has to do with terminology, which is basically one of the components we talked about of FHIR earlier. When we were introducing FHIR, we said terminology is one of the components. So we are not really going much into terminology. Terminology is itself a pretty detailed subject, as those of you who've already worked on in healthcare know. You have tons of code sets out there, and mapping between code sets is a big issue. So we're not really going into into terminology in detail, but it's important to know that for some fields, FHIR may require you to select a value from a given set. So here I can only choose these 4 because it's a required value set. It's a required binding. So this thing that we just looked at, this required word, it's called binding. So it's saying the binding of this value set is required. Now let's go down and let's look at marital status. Right? So marital status is a codable concept. Codable concept is a complex type. So and that's why you see a box here. It doesn't have just one value in it, but there's a set of, it's a full structure inside. Right? So let's take a look at that structure. So here it is, and it has 2 parts to it, and then this one is again a structure. So I need to go in here. Right, so coding, and they for some reason don't give us. Okay, here it is. So these are the elements within that. So the point now is, the point I was making is, so here you see a value code, right? This is, whenever we're talking about value sets and mapping and all these, I mean, code mapping has multiple connotations, but what I mean by here is, whenever we're talking about changes in terminology, and it has to do with a code element, right? As I mentioned, code is where you say you have a certain list of values that you have to select from. So this is the element that we're talking about. So now if you go back to that patient page, he was saying that in this codable concept, this value set is in the binding is extensible. So he doesn't, what he means is go into the codable concept, find that code element, and that code element, you will have to select a value from this value set. However, this says the binding is extensible. So extensible binding means that you are allowed to extend. So they will provide you some values, right? So they've given us values here. They've given these A, D, I, all these possible values. But then if supposing there's a value that you want, which is not here, and let's say, I don't know what they have given. So they have, for example, divorced. Let's say you wanted to have a value for divorce twice, right? So you wanted something like D2 there, and it's not there. So you can go ahead and add it because it's not there. So something like that. So there are some value sets that you can extend, you can add to. There are some value sets that are required, so the binding is required and you cannot change the codes in there. Then there is one called preferred, and preferred is, they say we prefer you to use the values that are there. But if none of the values that are present satisfy your use case, then you can add to it. But if one of the values satisfies your use case, then you are required to choose that one. It is like extensible, but it's more strict than extensible. Extensible is more lax. Extensible says I can extend it if I want. Preferred says if the value is similar value is already there, you cannot, don't change that. Only add if absolutely you cannot find a value that's not there. So here, for example, if I wanted, instead of D, I wanted DI, I could actually add another one here. Okay. There's some that are called example. I don't know if a patient has one. Let's see. So you see another one required the same gender, but this one is administrative gender for the contact. Another required here. So this is another extensible one. It doesn't have a preferred one, but you will sometimes see a preferred binding as well. So why is this important? Why am I telling you this? I'm telling you this because when we start doing mapping, when you will go through the mapping document, we will come across things where in V2, they required you certain values, and in FHIR, they may require a different set of values. So you not only have to say which field corresponds to which data element, but you also have to map the values themselves for some cases. And that is something important to keep in mind. If you do not, if you give to a FHIR server a resource, and supposing instead of using male, female, other unknown, I put M here, your resource will fail. The FHIR server, if it is conformant, if it is following the specifications strictly, it will fail your resource and it will give you like a bad request error or something that we saw yesterday. So that's something important to keep in mind. If it's a required binding, you have to use one of the values given here. There cannot be anything else on your resource for that element. So any questions on that? So JP, your question is about mapping between code sets, or are you talking about mapping between V2 and FHIR? Hello? Joyati Goswami, are you on? Not sure. All right. That's the only question I see. Any other questions? Okay. All right, let's very quickly go over bundle resource. So yesterday we said whenever you do a search, right? So supposing you don't know which particular resource instance you're looking at, you don't have the ID, or which particular resource you want to look at, or you want to get from the server, or you want to update, or whatever. You don't have the ID for the resource. What you can do is you can do a search using the get verb, and we saw that yesterday. And we said because you're doing a search, your search result might be multi-valued. You might end up getting more than one resource which satisfies your search parameter constraint. In that case, the FHIR server has to return to you a set of resources, right, instead of just one resource. And what we saw yesterday was that what the FHIR server was returning was a bundle. It was a resource type of type bundle. So it's actually in this top layer, the one that I told you to ignore, foundation layer. This is probably one of the ones that we will use from this layer. We already saw value set actually. It's also in this layer here, that terminology related. But then this is the one that we are going to talk about now. Okay. So this is what the resource structure is, right? So let's take a look at the JSON structure. So everything here is kind of straightforward, except a few things I think I should mention. One, so this resource type is bundle, but in this resource, you are going to basically bundle multiple resources of other types, right? It could be all of one type. They could be all different types. It doesn't matter. You can basically bundle pretty much any kind of resource in here. It has to be a resource though, what you're bundling. If it's not a valid resource, you'll get an error. So if you go inside this resource, a lot of this stuff has to do with the bundle metadata itself, right? So this is all about bundle. So you don't worry about that. I mean, we'll need to worry about that, but let's not worry about it right now. So let's talk about entry, because this is where you're going to send all your resources that you're bundling. And in this, the one that is where you're going to put your resource is called resource. So in the resource, you can see it's a type object and it carries the whole resource inside it. So the full resource is basically being pasted inside this resource element. And there is another important point, and that is in our first discussion on Wednesday, we had talked about references. So sometimes you may need to reference between resources, right? So you may need to say, this is my patient and these are the visits for my patient, and you're bundling them together and sending across, because then it has meaning, right? If I ask for visits for a patient, the visits don't mean much until I also get the patient information. So you basically end up what you send across the connection, what you send is a bundle, and that bundle carries your patient resource and it carries all the encounter resource. And from the encounter resource, each encounter resource is going to have a reference to that patient resource. So when you do that, what you will see is that there is a thing called full URL here, okay? And this full URL says it's basically of type URI. You can read about the URI type, you know where to look up the data types, right? But basically it's a uniform resource identifier type, and it has certain constraints. So the idea here is you build a full URL for each resource and see how this thing is, this whole object repeats, right? So this, in the entry, this whole thing repeats from here to here, I believe. So, so it's repeating of, right? So in here you have, inside this, you have a resource field that you're giving your resource. There's some other stuff here, which I'm gonna ignore. So, but this whole set is repeating. So what happens is, supposing I have one resource here and then I have the whole thing repeating and another resource there, and I want to connect between the two, I give a full URL for the resource that I want to reference to, and then I also define that same path in the reference field on the other resource. So let's take a look at an example, because that's a mouthful to say. So let's take a look at this one. So it's a bundle here. You have the entry field right there. This is your first resource. It's a patient. Okay. And this goes on and on until here. Okay. And then you have another resource. And this is actually of type bundle 2. So there's more stuff inside this. So this is kind of a nested bundle. So you have another bundle in here. And this bundle, if you look, link. Okay, so this is actually slightly different. This is not what I necessarily needed. Yeah, so in this one, what they have done actually is they have not really put the resource, they have put the URL to the resource. So they're saying the resource can be found at this URL. So instead of giving the resource in here, they're given the link. But I wanted to show example of the source. Let's see if they have this one, how that looks. No. Oh, maybe this one. Patient. Okay, great. All right, so here's an example, right? So in this one, we have a patient resource, and then we have an observation for that patient. So in my bundle, in my entry, I have this resource, patient, right? And this is the value for this resource data element or resource key. I also have a key called full URL, which I showed earlier. And here is you give a URL. Okay, let's take a look at this one, not that one. So here. So you have a resource, and for that resource, you have the full URL, right? So this is in that URI form. Now, I have another resource called observation here, and this resource has, this is my full URL. Now, in this observation source, there's a field called subject. Okay. So this is referencing to patient with URL patient 23. And if you see, I had listed that full URL here, patient 23 for the first patient, right? And same way for my second patient, I had listed this as my URL, full URL. And so if you look in the other observation, so that was one observation just looked at. And then there's another observation here in the same bundle. And that observation, you have the subject reference is this guy. So this one points to this patient, the second patient in here. So basically what happens is when you send this bundle to the server, supposing this is the one that you are sending to the server, The server is going to open up this bundle, is going to post all these resources where it needs to post. So all the patients will go in the patient resource type. All the observations will go under the observation source type. And what's going to happen is what will happen is that these links that we put in there, right? These these references, the subject reference that we put in here will get resolved. So the server is going to resolve it. That is, the server is going to update this. Remember, when you send this resource to the server is going to assign an ID to it, right? So the server is going to go and update this with whatever ID it assigned to that patient. So you don't have to worry about, because beforehand you don't know what ID the server is going to assign. So you don't have to worry about, oh, I don't know that. How do I make these connections? So you can make these connections within a bundle the way I described, by using full URL and then giving the reference to the full URL. And then when you post this to the server is going to resolve those references to the server assigned IDs. So that's, I think, the main thing I wanted to talk about. Any questions about that? Because this is something we will see if we post bundles, if we generate bundles out of our from our mappings. We don't have to. Okay, we can choose to send them one by one separately. You don't have to send them as a bundle. But if you do want to send them as a bundle, this is how you'll reference between them. Okay. Any questions on that one? Okay. So
This conference will now be recorded.
So, Amrit, do we want to figure out if we want to do additional round of introductions?
I think it sounds to me some people may not have understood what we are talking about. So maybe once, you know, like you demoed that one tool, maybe there'll be more clarity in what we are talking about. So, and then we can probably at that point, I think it will be a better place to ask people, you know, if they want to go beyond that and program more stuff, or if they have their own ways of doing it as well.
Okay.
So yeah, so I think what Ravi is saying is that what we are hoping to get out from this Connectathon, one target of this event is to, or this track is to test out the mappings that have been put out there by the international project and also build on those. So that's why we are going to do the MDM mapping that we are going to talk about in a few minutes. But then also this whole tooling part, which is another aspect of it, which is basically developing a code that takes these mappings and automatically converts them into FHIR resources, right? So that's what he's talking about, and that is something that will require obviously people who can program, right, who can write code, and then it will, and also if you're interested in that, right? So that's what he's talking about. I think he is, Phillips is already going to share some tool with us for us to be able to use during the Connectathon event, but there are multiple ways you can do it. So that's one way of doing things. There might be other ways that you guys might be using in your own companies, and if that's what he's saying, if you have something else, some other way which you use, and you want to share that and kind of showcase it to the rest of the people, it would be nice, because it's just a sharing of ideas. You don't have to necessarily share your code, but you can share what what basically your concept is in that tool. So that's one thing. And the other thing is, if you want to go ahead and build on what's already out there, and you're interested in actually doing more coding and building on that tool, that's the other part of it, that if you're interested in that, that also is something you can use this event as a means of doing that, or even starting upon it and then continuing work beyond the event. So that's what So I think he's going to demonstrate, or somebody from Philips is going to demonstrate their tool, I think, on Tuesday. So maybe at that point, once you guys have an idea of what we're talking about, you guys can express your interest and let us know if you're interested in that. And then we are already planning a separate optional session for that. So for somebody who just wants to go in there and do coding, but we just want to know who those people would be who would be interested in that. Okay. So the other thing we're going to talk about today, is actually, we're going to talk about the core stuff now, and that is the mappings, all right? So this is a document, and I will send this link. Those of you who already attended Han's session might have already seen this. I don't know if you, after the session, you went back and checked it out. But here's a document that they've put together. And this document, you can see, shows you mappings for the messages. Then it goes on to show you mappings for the individual segments. It has mappings for the data types. All right, those are all separated out. Remember, segment has fields, and each field is a data type, right? So within the segment, you'll be using the data type mappings. And as you go in here, you will see it'll call, well, actually, you'll have to look at one of the, so supposing I click on observation mapping, go to that document, and that document, this side is V2, this side is FHIR. It's actually hidden in this one. I don't know why they have stuck it at this view. And I don't think I'm able to actually scroll. But here you can see the mapping. So anyway, I don't think we are going to actually, I'm not going to recommend you guys to necessarily use these documents, because all this has also been put on the website. So it's probably better if you look at the website instead of looking at the document. But this document was a starting point. This was then translated. Everything was put onto the website, and this website is somewhere here. Okay. So here are all the mappings, right, for all the segments. So here's message mapping. And they have also put it on an IG page, which again is a link that I will send. So here again, you're seeing the same thing. These are segment maps. And if you go back, so here's the table of content, right? The first page. And here you're seeing all the data type mappings first, right here. And you can actually just go from here. So you have message maps, you have segment maps, you have data type maps, right? So the message maps. In the message maps, these are the ones they have worked on so far, or at least the ones they have put online. So if you click on ADT, you will get the ADT mappings. And this ADT mapping, this is a message, right? So you have segments in it. So each segment, it will call out the segment mapping. So you have to go to the segment map. So let's say, for example, I'm interested in PID mapping, right? So I go to this segment mapping. This is segment mapping. Click on it. All right, so then you go to the segment map. Now, in the segment, obviously you have fields, and each field is a data type. So for each field, you may have to look up the data type mapping. So let's say patient name, right? So it's telling you which FHIR attribute it is, and it's telling you the data type. And so the human name mapping you can find here. Oh, actually, no, never mind. This is not the mapping. This is the data type. Which one did I click? Okay. So this one actually they don't have it.
So that's XPN towards the right.
Oh yeah. So yeah, so here, right? So you click on this. That's your data type mapping. So again, all of these maps have the same structure. There's the HL7 stuff on the left-hand side, the FHIR stuff to the right-hand side. So everything here is about V2, what the cardinality, what the data types and everything are in V2. And on this side, it's the same thing repeated for FHIR. So what's the element, what's the data type, and what's the cardinality in FHIR. Okay, so I think what we will do is it's going to be 12. So what we'll do is we'll take a look at a couple of these. Maybe we'll look at ADT A01 or A08, whichever they have, together today. And then we'll also talk about MDM. So what I have done is we want to do this mapping. So let's go back to the here this ADT A01 mapping, right? So we want to build something very similar to for MDM T02. And we cannot do it directly on the website. We'll have to do it in the document, just like the document you saw earlier. And I've actually created an instance. I did the copy from ADT A02, ADT A01, and this needs to be cleaned up. I'll clean that up a little bit. But then also within this, you will have segments TXA, and you will have OBX segment. Now, OBX segment mapping is already there, but the OBX segment mapping will probably change when it has to be used in an MDM. So we'll have to create another mapping for OBX as well. So for those, I have created 2 documents, and to make it easy for us, I have already added the V2 side. So you have the name, you have the identifier, the name, and the data type and cardinality for both OBX as well as TXA. Or this is the TXA one. So that information is already on here. What we need to start doing is we need to start populating the corresponding FHIR attribute, and then again find the data type mapping, the appropriate data type mapping, and then the FHIR site cardinality. So this we are obviously going to get from the FHIR website, right? It's not something we can define. But then this is what we need to figure out. This we need to figure out. No, not this. The mapping we need to figure out. So data type again will come from. So these 3 come from FHIR website, and then data type mapping is what we need to figure out. Which data type mapping we need to use. Because the reason I'm saying which one, because sometimes you might have multiple data mappings for the same type, or you might even have, like we said, for the same segment, you might have multiple mappings. Like for OBX, you might have one mapping for ORU and a different mapping for TXA. And that is exactly what you see when you look at this page. Okay. So when you look at this page, that's what it means when it says in brackets here, provenance originator and provenance translator. Because there are 2 different mappings for MSH. Okay, and there's one more that's just called MSH. So there are essentially three mappings. You will see that for more of them. For example, this one, NK1 related person mapping and NK1 patient.contact mapping. So similarly, we are going to have an OBX. They already have an OBX observation mapping. We are most likely going to need an OBX document to reference mapping, which is what I've created here, the document, right? OBX document reference. So we essentially have to do these two mappings essentially. I mean, the message mapping itself is very straightforward, right? You just have the various segments and you know which segment mapping page you're going to. You just have to put that in there. So that's easy. The real mapping is in these individual segments that we have to do. So what we will do is, let's see. So those of you who really want to contribute to this mapping, I had asked this question of Hans on Tuesday, and he is very interested in people having contribute these mappings. They will add these mappings, so they will review those mappings that we send them, and then they will add them onto what you see on this website here. So the only thing is, we just so if you are interested in contributing that way, why don't you send me an email and let me know so we know how many people want to work on this. And then what we are going to do is we're going to have another meeting tomorrow in the evening, and we are going to decide from the people who express interest in actually doing this mapping. And I would strongly suggest people who are V2 specialists and who are FHIR specialists should take part in this, because I mean, this is where you basically get to contribute your knowledge for the benefit of the full community. This is something that will not be used only by us, but it's something that will be used throughout the community across the world, right? Once it gets posted on the FHIR website. So if you really have good knowledge of V2 messages, you understand what each of those fields carry and so on, and you have experience working with those a lot, and then say, or if you have experience working with FHIR document reference, for example, a lot, those will be very good contribution. I mean, those, you are very well poised to contribute to this kind of work, and I think you guys should volunteer for this. I'm going to volunteer for it. I think some people from my company may want to do it as well. But I would like to know who all of you would like to contribute to this. And then what we can do is, before Connectathon, we are going to, we basically have, mainly what we have is these two segments. Most of the stuff, rest of the stuff is going to remain the same. Like page is most likely not going to change, TV1 is not going to change. So these are the major two fields that are going to, or two segments that are going to change. So we want to make sure that we can distribute the fields among ourselves, and then some people work on some fields, some people do mapping for other fields, some people do mapping for a third set of fields, and by Connectathon we will have it all together, and we will have the full mapping for MDM. So that's what the proposal is. So let me ask you this. I can go over the whole document again because Hans has already done it. I think some of you might have already seen it. But if you still want me to go over all the mappings again, I can do that. Not in as much detail as he did, but I can show you what to find where. I would strongly suggest, I'm going to send out these links, so I would strongly suggest you guys after the meeting, go back and check them out, so that these mappings make sense to you. And any questions so far? And if you don't understand the mappings, let me know right now, because then I can go over them better. Go back to the mapping page. So again, there are different sources from where you can find these mappings at different stages of completeness. I think this is the least complete. You will find the most up-to-date information in those documents, which are really hard to navigate through because of they don't allow you to modify them, and you can't even move these columns around, which is annoying. But kind of all hidden, it's very hard to see this. Or go to the Confluence page. I think Confluence page is also relatively more updated than the IG itself. But the IG one is the least updated. Now, Hans did say that whoever is working on this might work on it before our Connectathon. I don't know what's going to happen. So Confluence page also, I will send out the link, so the mappings are available here as well. So remember, the mappings are all separate: message, segment, data type. Message will reference segment mapping will reference data type mapping, right? The question I have. Okay, so somebody asked me about bundle. I guess if the question could be a little bit more pointed, and I can tell you what exactly, where the confusion lies, as in. Okay, so what exactly do you want me to explain in here? I mean, it's a resource, okay? So it's a resource just like any other resource. And it's a resource that's used for bundling resources, multiple resources together. You have a lot of fields in here that are related to administrative stuff, right? The identifier of the bundle, the type of the bundle, what the timestamp on the bundle is, how many total resources you have, and so on. I mean, all this information is on the website. You can read through it. It's it's basically pretty straightforward. The only interesting thing is this entry, right? Because this entry is where you put all the bundled resources. And this entry is repeatable. You can see this repeatable field. And so you can have multiple resources in here. And one of the things I think that the most important for our perspective is going to be this resource field, because the resource field is where you're going to put your resource, right? So it says its type is resource. The whole resource is inside there. There's other stuff in here as well, and one of those stuff is I said it's going to be important, and that's full URL. And this is going to be important when you're trying to reference between the various resources. So if you were in the first one, if you don't understand references, then I would say go back and check out the meeting from Wednesday. We already talked about references there. But basically what we're trying to do is reference between resources here. And to do that referencing, we use this full URL field. That's what I showed you. So we put, let's go back to the example now. So here was my example. I had two patients in here. There was one patient here, right? There's one patient here. So note, this is an array. Let me blow this up a little bit. Okay. So we have an entry field. It's an array. So it's the objects are going to repeat. Okay. So this whole thing is going to repeat. So in this object, you have the full URL, and then you have the resource. And you can see this is your resource from here to here. So in this resource, you can see this is a patient type resource. And you can see the ID, you can see the text information, you can see the identifier. That's your patient resource. So that's one patient resource, and that patient resource has a URL associated with it that's given here. Okay. Now this whole object is going to repeat. So now we come down here, and you have another repetition. Okay. This time again, that's your resource from here to here. That resource is type patient again, and that's the URL for that patient. Okay. You define these URLs. Totally up to you. You can put anything in there so long it satisfies the requirements of a URI data type. So there's a third resource here, right? Third entry. And in this third entry, you're seeing you have, actually, no, hold on, it goes all the way to here. So it goes all the way from here to here, okay? And this entry, what you see is, again, you have a resource type observation, and that resource has this full URL, okay? So the point is, I have this observation resource, and I have this observation. Observation basically is a resource that carries observation results, like lab results and things like that. So this guy is going to say, I am a result for this patient, right? He has to say that. The observation source has to say that. So that is in the subject field. So he's saying, I'm going to reference this patient because I'm meant for this patient. So this patient, this reference should match the URL, okay? And if you see, it matches this URL. Now, you might ask the question why I don't have this stuff. It's because this stuff is common. This bundle is sitting in the same path. Remember, we talked about the base URL. So this base URL is common, so it's just dropped in. Okay, it doesn't matter because server can understand that it's the same base. So it doesn't. You don't need to repeat that. But you're giving it this part here. Okay, and let's see another observation resource here, right? So this observation resource, oh, sorry, not this one, and that's the next entry, right? So again, here's an entry. Okay, that's another entry. And this one also is an observation. And now this observation is meant for this patient. Okay, so you see subject, reference. And that patient is our second patient up here. See. Okay, that's this patient, this one. You can see the full URL here. So that's what it is. So basically the idea was, bundle itself is very straightforward. What I was trying to show you today was how you reference within bundle. And that's going to be important because, well, might be important, I don't know. Depends on how you create mapping, bundles out of mapping. And we will see that in the over the next week. But you really have a choice. You may decide to send the resources one by one individually. That's perfectly fine. There's no reason, no need to necessarily post a full bundle. The good thing about posting a bundle is that those bundle, all the related information is packed together, and then you can reference between them very easily. Otherwise, referencing is tough, right? Because remember, you need to know the ID, and the ID is assigned by server. I think I've hammered down on that point multiple times. The ID is assigned by the server. So you don't know that. So you don't know which, how to put that reference in your resource. But bundle allows you a way to do that. That's the whole point. That's why I'm saying bundle helps you with that. And that's why I'm focusing on this part. There's no other reason. But having said that, if you are trying to work one by one, for example, for the purposes of the Connectathon track, and you post a resource and the server assigns an ID, you can always get the resource back. Remember, you can always get the resource back from the server using the get word. You can also, even when you post your resource, right, if you are asking the server to send you the representation back, like we talked about yesterday, by using prefer header. So if you're using a prefer header field and you're asking the server to send you back the representation, then you will get the representation back. Sometimes servers will do that by default. So now you have the representation back and you can see the ID there, right? Whatever the server assigned. So you can note down that ID. And next time you have to update that same resource, you can provide the ID. Or you have to reference to that resource, you can type your ID inside your resource. So that's what you will have to do. But that will be a step where you will, additional step where you'll have to first figure out what the ID was assigned by the server. If you put them together in a bundle, then the bundle will take care of all the ID resolution, like I discussed right here. You just assign your own full URLs, and then the server will figure out, okay, this one means this patient. So whatever ID I put in here, I'm also going to use it in here. That's basically what it is. Correct. So if you were doing blood sugar of all, no, not, yeah, you can do that. You can create a bundle there. Blood sugar of all diabetic patients in a single view. Yes, you can, basically you'll have to bundle your patients as well as so you can do it in two ways, right? You can create one bundle per patient. So you create one bundle per patient, one for one patient, put all the, you are not audible, Jyoti, no. I can only see you read your chat. So you can either bundle them per patient. So you have one patient and all the observations for that one patient in one bundle. The second patient and all their observations in the second bundle. Third patient and all their observations in the third bundle. That's one way of doing it. You can put all the patients in the same bundle and then reference the observations to the appropriate patient by using full URL in the manner I just described, and put them in just one bundle. It's really up to you and your implementation, how you want to do it, and your code, right? But yeah, you have those options. The third option is you send your patient individually. Send one patient, figure out the ID, send the second patient, figure out their ID, and then put those IDs in your observation sources and post the observation sources separately. So as I said, you don't have to do a bundle. It's totally how you're programmed, how you programmed your stuff, and whether you want to send the full thing together or you want to send them separately, it's really totally up to you. First ADT comes and server creates patient entry, all right? Then ORU comes, it will have patient info and observation info. We will be sending it as a bundle. Okay, will server ensure update observation for same patient? That, yeah, and that's the thing. So you have to say, right, which patient you are updating. You will have to provide that. And one way of doing that is doing you know, if you have the the ID of the patient, like I just said, if you have the ID of the patient, you can put that in your put command when you do the put call it the request line, right? When you say put and then you give the URI. In the URI, you can give the ID, and then you know that you're only updating that particular patient. So that's one way of doing it. The other thing that we didn't talk about is yesterday is you can do a conditional update. And the reason I did not want to talk about is one, it's advanced, but the second thing also is because not all servers support it. So in fact, I think I tried it on this Graham server and I don't think it worked. Some servers do, but not all of them will support it. But there is something called conditional update that you can do. And you can probably read about it on the FHIR page. But that's again optional. It's optional for the servers to implement. So some servers will implement it, some won't. So if you really want to make sure your resource or your method is working with all servers, then the best thing is to provide the ID. So wait, the question was about updating for the observation or updating the patient information? So if you're saying observation for same patient, that's exactly what I showed, right? That's how you reference. You are from the observation resource, you will reference back to that patient resource. So that's where you're building that connection. And so you know by that connection that this observation is meant for that patient and not for some other patient. So that's how you are doing the linking between patient and observation. Okay. All right. Any other questions about bundles? Okay, let's do one thing. So we're gonna move on. Any questions about terminology, because that's going to be also important when you guys when we start doing mapping and testing out our maps. Was terminology stuff clear, like the value set and the bindings that we talked about? Any questions on that? Okay. So I need some volunteer, I think. I need to update this. This is the message, MDM message. Okay, I've already created for segments. But for the message itself, somebody needs to, this is V2 stuff. This is all V2 stuff. Just the V2 side we need filled out. On the, let me see. On this side, so which one is this?
I think these are like the panes are frozen. You can look at options of unfrozen.
Yeah, no, this one actually I can move. It's because of that go-to thing that's causing issues here. This one actually I can move them, but that other one is frozen. Other one, he said we are not allowed to edit. So I'm not sure if, I've not tried it, but most likely we won't be able to change the things either. These ones I can move around. And honestly, we do need to see both sides. So we need actually V2 side also. So in view, kind of half-half. So, but basically, somebody just needs to go in here and update this for MDM. We already have so the other thing I think point I should mention is the sort order, right? So the sort order is telling you in which order these segments appear in the message. That's what this is. Same way when you see the sort order on the segment mapping, that means how those fields are going to appear in the segment in which order. So for at least to start out, we can just assume that we have only one MSH, and then if we need to, we can add more. But for now, I'm going to delete that and just say I have this MSH. This will change to MDM. Right, and then we have all the other fields as well. I'm not sure, software segment and user authentication. I've not really used these in the past, but so we just need that update, and then we need to accordingly also update this field, because if it's TXA, for example, there'll be a TXA somewhere, and that TXA will say document header or whatever it's called exactly in HS7 terms. We need to update that in here, and then the cardinality. The other thing to note is, they're not using any infinite symbol here. There's no infinity symbol. Instead, they are using this -1. So this -1 essentially means infinity. So if anybody sees, is confused why we have cardinality -1, it just means infinity. And then we need to clear this part out. We'll update it as we go along. And then on Fireside also, we need to clear it out. So MSH is probably going to remain somewhat similar. Some of these might remain similar. PID is probably going to remain the same. So that's the kind of stuff we need updated first. And then the segments is something that we will talk about more tomorrow. So do I have any volunteers who are interested in doing this cleanup for MDM document for the message mapping? Anybody who's very good at V2? Sounds like a no. Okay, if you're interested, let me know, and we'll clean this up. So the point of this connectathon is that we all are working, right, contributing to it. So whatever bit you can contribute, I think will be helpful. Somebody wants to, if you want to do it by segments, that's fine too. And I understand there'll be questions on this side, Fireside as of now, from for a lot of you, because you're not really used to it. So so that's fine, but at least the V2 side needs to be set up as well, right? And then Fireside we can just clean up and then update again later on. Okay, so that's one thing. Also another thing, let's go back here.
Hey, Amrit, I just want to add that you don't need to understand everything. Only when you get involved in the process, things becomes clear.
Exactly.
So don't wait to be an expert to participate.
Oh, yeah. No, but V2, I mean, from the V2 perspective, I guess they will need to have that understanding well beforehand. For Fireside, very right. For Fireside, I mean, don't think that, you have to be an expert. I mean, but that's the whole point of this connectathon. We want you to learn, and until you guys contribute, you're not going to learn. It's that simple. Just by listening to lectures and me telling you this is a bundle, that's a bundle, you'll understand it now. Tomorrow you'll go back and forget it. It's not tomorrow. In 1 week, 2 weeks, everything will be gone. If you work on it, you'll not forget it. That's simple. It's just how human brain works. So if you really want to learn, I think we will encourage you guys to contribute, because that's the best way of learning. And we'll start with small things and then we'll slowly build up. One of the things that I also wanted to show here was this page that we talked about earlier. There are a few things that I wanted to make sure you guys do look at. One is patient. One is in here, observation. So when we do our actual event, during our actual event, we are going to be working with these resources quite a bit. Patient, of course, anybody can understand. But observation is where all the results go. So you'll see that a lot. You'll see diagnostic report a lot. And the other one for MDM we are going to need is document reference, which is up here. So one other thing is make sure that, you know, I said earlier also, make sure you go through this list, at least have some idea of what the various resources are. But specifically look at these 4 that I just mentioned. Those are going to show up again and again. You will also see things like condition. If encounter is the other one, so you should also look at encounter to visit. So what is that? Here. So that one also will show up in pretty much everything. So those 5, 6 resources you should take a look at. So I'm going to share this document. All right, thanks, Avanti. So I will, I'm going to share these documents with you guys, all 3, the message mapping, and the 2 segment mappings. And what we will do is tomorrow in the evening, I think at 7:30, which is our usual time, we will come back here and we'll gather once again, and we're going to talk about one, if somebody starts making progress on them, that's very great. If not, then we are just going to decide like who does how much. Remember, we have a big group. We have like 20+ people. Okay, I mean at least 19 to 20 are joining the calls every day. I think somebody is able to join some days somebody else joins, but we have about 29 people on the track so far. So that's a lot of people. So if we were to, and there are not more than 29 fields in one segment. So we're not telling you to map the whole segment. We're just saying 1 or 2 fields. Probably in your share, you'll get like 2, 3 fields, that's it. So I think that you should, and that probably will not take more than half an hour to 1 hour at the most. And it's mostly going to revolve around these 5, 6 resources that I showed you already. You won't even have to look at all these resources out here. Just these 5, 6 resources. Most of the stuff is going to sit around them. So it's not that complicated stuff. And when you start doing it, you'll get the hang of it, and it becomes much easier. And so I think it's good to just get started with it. Just look at it. What I would recommend very strongly is whatever we have. I'm going to share these documents. I'm also going to share the links to the Confluence page, to the IG, and I would recommend that you guys go through that. We have already talked about the mappings, what the structure is. If you're not looked at the hands video, you may want to take a look at it. Or if you don't have time to look at it, that's fine. You just ask us and we'll let you know, or we'll answer your questions regarding the document or the IG pages. But the important thing is that take a look at it, get a feel of it, and also start and just volunteer, because once you volunteer and when you start to do it, you'll get the hang of it. It's not that complicated. The only important thing is that I think you will only learn if you try and do stuff. Just listening to one-way talks is not really going to help much. Anything you want to add, Ravi?
Not right now, Amit. I think we are good for the time being.
Okay. So I'm not sure if you're supposed to be on here till 1 necessarily.
So I see someone volunteering for MDMSH.
Correct. I think a lot of people are doing that. So I have already seen Avanti, Jayati, and Shaji. Okay. Anand and Shaji, thanks for volunteering. So yeah, I'm going to send these documents. Go ahead and you guys will have the you will be able to edit them. You'll be the editor on them, on these documents. So you can go ahead and start working on them and update them. If you have questions, you know the Slack channel, just ping me and I'll respond. If you're working on it and you run into some issues, just let me know, or Ravi know, and we'll help you out. Okay. Satyam says there is a survey. Where is the survey though? Okay.
He has not yet. Yeah, it came.
So there is a survey, guys. It's on your on the Slack channel, FHIR India Connectathon channel. Can you go and fill it out?
Yeah, I have to.
Yeah, you can probably should be able to also do it from your phones. And yeah, I guess it's since you're not, it doesn't matter wherever you fill it out from.
Hey, Amrit, by the way, from Philips, both Rajiv as well as Nitish will join the MDM mapping.
Okay, all right. Sounds good. I mean, so it's everybody will be made an editor. So whoever wants to work on it. The only thing is, I guess, how can we do some sort of version control on it just to make sure people don't overwrite?
No, one other thing is you probably want to discuss about what if there's a conflict, Amrit. What if somebody entered?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking about. You know, how can we version control it so that, you know, even if people put in different stuff on top of each other, it goes into like different streams and not get overwritten.
One thing I will suggest is please don't overwrite. Probably you can add a comment if you have a conflict with the mapping so that everybody can review it and come to a conclusion.
So what I'm going to do actually is this. So in each of these, I'm going to add a column that says, you know, the user, like who's working on it. Okay, if you're working on it, just mark that field. So what the others should do is, if that particular row is being worked on by somebody else, don't work on that one. Select a different one, right? So there are like lots of them. So I think one thing we want to do next time, and that's what we want to do next time on Monday, is for the segments at least we will, I think, fix them. So like 2 segments per person, right? Or 2 fields per person, I mean. So we will kind of distribute them out so there's no confusion. So everybody knows which fields they are working on. For the main document, the message document, that is the one which I think you can start working on right now. So don't work on these yet, okay? Don't work on the segments yet. But on this one, I think this is the one that needs updates really badly right now. And I think I already got 2 volunteers, Anand and Shaji. You guys want to work on MDM. So since you are both from the same company, I believe.
Yes, we are from same company. We are from same company, Siemens.
You guys can probably work together and coordinate, right? So you're not overwriting like one of you update something and then the other person updates. So you guys can probably coordinate on this one. And then there is, Ravi, did you say Philips will work on also on this one or the others? You know which ones they want to work on?
Rajiv, do you want to volunteer?
Yeah, Ravi. So yeah, Amrit. So I can also take so segment wise you are asking, then probably the TXT segment.
This is the message mapping. So right now for today, I think between today and tomorrow, I think we're only talking about the message mapping. So this is like the full message, right? Like each. So basically what this says is this segment, the mapping sits here. Now remember these mappings are already there, right? The EVN, paid PD1 and PV1, these are not going to change because it doesn't matter whether it's OBR or ORU or whether it's ADT, the fields are the same. They're probably coming from the same fields in FHIR, right? Same patient resource, encounter resource. So those are not going to change much. There will be that linking, the referencing part that will change, and we'll talk about that later. But mapping will basically remain like that. So these are the ones I think we need updated as of now. And then the only thing that will be additional here is the TXA segment, right? The TX segment, they don't have mapping for it yet. So that one we don't have a mapping yet, but the document I have already created, right? This document is there. So you can reference the document. Yeah, that's a document, right? So you can reference the document, and we don't have the mapping yet, that's fine, we'll work on the mapping. So this is the one. So this is for the message, for the whole message, not per segment. So I guess the question I'm asking right now is, who are the people who are interested in doing the mapping for the full message?
Yeah, I can contribute
Okay.
here.
Okay, so then maybe what you do, Rajiv, is you can maybe look at up till PD1, all right, the top 6 ones, just verify that whatever is in these here will satisfy. And then these guys, because PD1 says ADT, but MDM also has PD1, at least PID it has. So you can check up to those PID segments, PID and NK1 and
Okay.
yeah, you can do that. And then
probably we can take the report part of it if you
the
come
below
down.
part, right? The report and the TXA and the OBX.
Yeah, exactly.
So those are the lower part you guys can work on. So that's how we can do it.
That
Then we'll
Anand and Shaji would take. Yeah, rest of the topic whoever volunteered can take. Yeah.
Okay, so let's do it that way. I always don't remember the full. I'll just take a look at the full message. Right. So maybe, Rajiv, do you think you can do these like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 segments up till page?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, most likely those will not change a lot, so you can just verify once. And then below that, I guess you guys can do PV1 and the TXA and the OBX.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so I think that's good. So we'll have at least the message one taken care of, and then we can work on the segments. We'll talk about the segments tomorrow. All right. So I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to fill out the questionnaire. Please go ahead and fill out the questionnaire if you have not yet.
Amrit, I have a question. Okay, hope people in the group don't mind what I ask. Okay, is it fine?
Yeah, sorry, go ahead. What was the question?
I was just saying. Hope the group doesn't mind what I ask. I said.
Oh no. Go ahead.
Okay. The thing is, few of the people, right? You said, I mean, people will learn only when they contribute, right? So now we haven't worked much on
Correct.
either V2 or so now, but we have some kind of background, clinical background, or working in it. But we'd be having some idea. But the only thing is the reason why we are not jumping into it is because we might either slow you down or maybe we need a hand holding.
But I guess if you guys ask for help, I mean, that's why this group is, right? You won't probably get this kind of group anywhere else.
Yes. So what I'm asking is, let's say if I partner with somebody, we can have separate, we can schedule some time separately and maybe learn from them or somebody who's a little better than me.
Yeah. So I mean, Yep.
At this point in time, sometimes we feel embarrassed to ask all this, but like you said, if you
No.
want to learn, this is a platform. So then why not?
Right. Yeah, no, Connectathon, one of the things about Connectathon, I think was mentioned in one of these talks earlier, is one, we are all come from different companies. So we are not supposed to say bad about any company, okay?
Correct.
We are all working together here, and obviously everyone will have, every company has trade secrets, and nobody is asking anybody to share their trade secrets here. But you're supposed to be working. I mean, the idea is that we communicate by learning stuff. I mean, FHIR is an upcoming standard, and we all want to make it a successful standard. So the more people know about it, the more people use it, it's going to become more successful. So there is nobody is going to say anything bad about anybody. It's not that's not going to happen. And what you're suggesting or what you are proposing is exactly the purpose of this meeting. Like the whole point of Connectathon is that people collaborate and learn from each other. The learning is true for pretty much everybody. Even for us who have worked on FHIR, I'm sure we're going to learn something. So everybody's like, I have not really worked with, for example, tooling that much. So that's something that I'm hoping to learn from this. So everybody's going to learn something or the other. So what your suggestion is good. Question is, do you have any specific preferences as to who you want to team up with?
That's what, since everybody, most of them are new for me, or probably all are new for me.
Right. So I mean,
the only thing is I don't want to slow somebody down.
Yeah, I mean, it won't be slowing, right? I mean, they will still work at their own speed. If you are able to help, great. If you're not, you are tagging along and kind of learning. So the question is, so I think the best way to do this, first of all, I don't think everybody is on this call. There are now only 17 people left. And the other thing is, I think the best thing is use the Slack channel. I mean, that's what the Slack channel is for. So just openly say there, like I want to team up with somebody to do OBX map, or whatever you want to do, right? And if whoever is working on it, and it's better if you do it between today and tomorrow, because tomorrow will probably figure out like who's doing what. So tomorrow is going to be more of a work schedule kind of meeting where we'll decide this is what we do over the next 4 days before actually. So yeah.
And allergies segment is somebody's taking up, or maybe OBX does the job.
Say again, I didn't get that.
Allergies.
Oh, allergy. Is that even a segment on TXA?
That's what I mean.
It doesn't show it in this. I don't know if it's probably not even allowed. I'm not sure actually. But allergies is there. So on the mappings that are already out there, right? Allergy segment is already there. There's already a mapping for it. I'm pretty sure I saw.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I would like to partner up with somebody since whom I can learn. But yeah, the other one is the best.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And I would say, in fact, it doesn't necessarily have to be somebody who already knows stuff. It even if you are like 2-3 people, new people working together, right? Even that way you can learn better than doing it just on your own. So here's actually, we have an AL1 segment mapping already there.
Okay.
Yeah. So TXA is the major one missing here. And I'm a bit surprised because in US, TXA ends up, it gets used a lot, almost as much as ORU, but they didn't think about doing that. I'm surprised, but they haven't done TXA with MDM for some reason. They have done allergies. Allergies actually I've seen more.
And
I mean, if you want to, go ahead.
Yeah, how about results? Let's say microbiology results.
Yeah, they have it. That one they have. Yeah. I don't think they have necessarily completed it. I'm not sure. I looked at it earlier. We have actually done some work in our company the other way. We've done work the other way, going from FHIR to V2 instead of V2 to FHIR. And we did micro, but when we looked at these mappings, they were not that helpful to us. We had to kind of do our own stuff separately. But I know that they have been working on it. I think it's just not done properly yet, or not complete yet.
Have some
Yeah,
experience doing.
it says over here under construction. So that's the thing. You know, if there's anything here that's this thing, and you want to contribute to it, I think Hans was very clear that yes, anybody wants to contribute can contribute. If you think there's something missing here, or even if you think something is there, but you know, differently in your setting, what you experience with, you're welcome to create another mapping for it, the way you think it should be. And so long you're using the same format of the document that they have provided, the only requirement is the template has to be completely the same. And so that you know they can resolve it later on when it's all comes together. So you know, feel free if you feel there's something missing here and you want to do this within the scope of this event. Go through the list and you can do that. You can add that one as well. So MDM is the one I proposed because I saw it missing and I felt it was an important one. But if you guys see anything else that you want to do, which is not here, feel free to suggest that and we'll do that.
Remember, it's already an ORE message is there. It's defined out there. We can sit down and validate for microbiology results.
Yeah. So that's a good point. Yeah. So we haven't. I think we didn't talk about that today. Maybe we'll talk more about it tomorrow. Is on the day of the event, what we are planning to do is we're planning to have messages of these different types, right? So, if, for example, your ORU messages, we're planning not to do just lab results, but we will do lab results. We will do vitals. We will do micro results. So we'll do all flavors of them, or not all, but a lot of flavors of them, just to make sure that these mappings are working for all those, right? If for micro, they've created a separate one, but like otherwise they have not created separate. I don't think they have vitals ORU. So we want to also test, you know, this ORU works for vitals as well. It works for EKG, it works for ORU, for vitals, it works for pathology reports, it works for lab results. So those kind of use cases, that's what we want to, that's what testing is about, right? We want to test all the possible cases and make sure it still looks good. So, and remember again, now I think we have more people. So I think I should again mention this. So if anybody is working in Indian context, primarily in Indian context with clients or hospitals who generate V2 messages, it would be great if you guys can contribute those to the event, like take some messages from there, remove the patient information. We're not asking you to share the PHI information, but if you can provide us some real scenario messages, that will be great. So if you have, for example, client, you're working with a hospital who is generating all these messages, we just need 1 or 2 sample messages. The key segments should remain similar. The PID and PA1, you can definitely remove those. We can put our own there as well. We can just plug in some other PID and P1 segments, but like something like ORU, OBR, OBX, you know, if we can get how it looks for real Indian scenarios, that'll be good. We have a way to generate samples, but samples, again, all those code and everything is mostly based on US, how they are shared in US. There should not be a lot of difference, but there can be some difference. So we just want to kind of see some real messages if possible from the Indian context. Now, apart from that, even if it's not Indian context, even if you have messages, say, from a US context, after removing the PID information, the sensitive information, if you have those, I think even those will help. At least they'll be real, not samples. So and that's the other thing I think I want to bring up. I did that in the beginning of the talk before a lot of people had joined. So. I think some of you had said that you have some messages on the survey that we had sent out. I think some of you had said that you have specific messages that you want converted. So by all means, if you have anything specific that you want to test on, bring them. You don't even have to share them with the rest of us, so long you tell us what you found was working and what was not working in the mappings. That's all we really need to know. So if you have some of messages of your own that you want to test with, please, you're more than welcome to bring them to the event and try those out. Okay. So I think we are almost near the end of the meeting. I think we are going to end the call. It's only about 7 minutes to 1, so don't think we have to necessarily wait till 1. So everybody filled out the